The Surviving Jewel by Rachel Timpson. Rome had just collapsed. Chaos was everywhere. Women were scooping up their wailing children, while men were grabbing as many possessions as possible. All civilians were running in every direction, calling for their family and friends. I raced past a man carrying a large bag of flour and ran into my house. Where was it? Where did I put it? I hadn't seen it in a long time. It had probably been around 4 years. All I knew was that I had to find it. It was the difference between my death and my survival in this hectic world. 4 years before, my family was in a tight spot. My mother had just given birth to my younger brother, Bennett, and my father had just lost his job. As if we weren't poor enough already, we were literally scanning the streets for any food we could find. We were desperate. So desperate that I began to resort to stealing food or anything I could sell. On that day 4 years ago, I noticed a woman of high class purchasing a large diamond in a store in the heart of Rome. When the job was done, she quickly scooped up the diamond, shoved it into her bag, and walked out the door. The woman pulled out a map and began to frantically try to find her way. That's when I saw it. The diamond was about to fall out of her bag. This was my time, now or never. I quickly jogged behind her and snatched the diamond. Before I knew it, I was entering the front door of my tiny house with my heart slamming against my chest. I knew that I could never sell this diamond, as someone would know I was a thief, so I hid it away. That day my dad announced that he had found a new job, and I knew our tough days were over. But I was wrong. Rome had just collapsed. Chaos was everywhere, and I had to find that diamond. As my mother screamed up the stairs for me, I noticed it, gleaming in the light within a crack in the wall. I inched my fingers through and grasped the diamond. From then on, I couldn't really remember what had happened. I recalled my brother being lost in the crowd and my parents running for him. All I knew was that I was in a group of strangers, running towards the woods. The bag on my back was the difference between my death and my survival in this hectic world. As the weeks went by, a group began to form in the woods. Strangers became friends, and people began to trust one another. We traveled for a while, further into the mysteries of the wilderness, until we found a place to settle. Soon enough, food was running low, and people became desperate. We grew food in our little community, but sometimes there wasn't enough to feed all of the hungry mouths. We began to sell any possessions of worth to anyone who could afford them. In no time at all, it became mandatory to sell anything that we could in order to feed everyone. I knew that other groups didn't have this law, which confused me. I also knew that selling my diamond would create a huge difference in the lives of our community, but something inside me told me not to. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that this diamond would help me with something else in my future. Life in the woods became less enjoyable every day. A man named Henry had gradually become our leader, and he truly was a boss. None of us really liked him, but we let him be because none of us really wanted to lead the pack. When I woke up, I knew something was wrong. Henry was calling out orders, and everyone was frantically packing up what little resources they had left. I grabbed as many possessions of my own that I could and checked on the diamond. I was still very worried that my secret fortune would be discovered. A few weeks before, a man had been beaten up by friends of Henry and left to fend for himself in the woods. This poor man most likely died just because he refused to sell his deceased mother's wedding ring. I couldn't even imagine what they would do to me if they discovered the diamond. On this morning, things seemed to be way too stressful. One of our scouts had reported that another large group was about to arrive, and that they were stealing resources from other groups. Henry was not going to let this happen, so most of us were out of there in no time at all. We walked for a long time until the trees grew so thick that daylight was tough to see. Branches scraped our faces and leaves crinkled at our feet. As Henry warned us that there was a large branch ahead, it happened. It was as if time had slowed down. A branch dug its way through my bag and created a large tear near the bottom. All of my belongings plummeted towards the earth, including the diamond. As I bent down to snatch it up, I felt like a million eyes were staring at me. All went silent except for a few crunches of leaves and swishes of branches. I shoved the jewel into my boot, but the damage had already been done. 2 pairs of strong arms grabbed me by the sides and dragged me towards Henry. I was questioned like mad, but I couldn't find the words to speak. I just stood there with my mouth slightly open and my eyes wide. I knew that my fate would be the same as the other man who was left to fend for himself. I felt the punches and kicks make contact with every inch of my body. The pain was unbearable. However, I did not make a sound. Before long, I was unconscious. I opened my eyes and realized that I had no idea how much time had passed. I was alone in the mysteries of the wilderness, with no one to hear my calls for help. My whole body was black and blue, though I did not encounter pain. As I sat up and blinked in the sunlight, I felt pressure on my left ankle. The diamond. Henry and his friends had been so busy punishing me that they had forgotten to take it. While I knew the road ahead would be rough, I also knew that I had a chance. Having this diamond granted my survival in this hectic world.